Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you how we got this really nice mist pass. And we basically cropped out the ground because if you render out this image and it's going to be a really low res render, we have that ground right there. And if we go to check out our mist pass, and you've seen this before, but for other people who haven't seen it, it's not easy to make that ground disappear. So the easiest way, the quickest way, if it's just this ground plane, what you can do is, so in passes, so in this box over here, I already turned it on. Okay, you have to turn on this object index. And this is the quick and dirty way, I would say. There's another cooler way for Blender 2.8, but we have this object index passed on, and you can see this index, I guess, OB, object. And you have to choose the object that you want to give an index to. So let's choose the ground and choose this little box here. That's the object data. In relations, if you scroll down, you'll see a pass index. Let's set that to 1. And just so we have something different to look at, I'm going to click the body of the car and set this to 2. So now if I render it, I gave those objects 2 different passes. And here's the car, and if I control shift click, we have this index OB and it's showing both of the things I gave a pass to. But if you go into converter, shift A, ID mask, you can drop this ID mask in, bring the index OB into the ID value, and then let me, so if it's set to 0, it just by default chooses both of them. But if I set it to 1, then I have the first index. If I set it to 2, I have the other one. So that's a really cool way to isolate. So now we have this white, and let's look at our mist. So we have this mist image, and we want to add the white back into it. So I'm going to say go to color, mix, and we'll start out with our mist pass on the bottom, and we'll then we'll add this alpha to it. So right now by default it's set to mix, so it's basically just a slider. Let me see if I can full screen this real quick. Okay, so we want to add it to it. So if I go to click that drop down menu, go to add, it's still not working, and I put it up to 1, it's still not working, and that is because this value here, even though it looks slightly gray on my computer, is actually a value of 1. So these values down here are going greater. So if I just click this clamp, now it won't allow values greater than 1. The reason it's actually letting greater than 1 values is because we're using the new filmic color space. So it's more than just RGB, and it allows you to like export data that's, you know, great has more dynamic range than 0 to 1, if that's my understanding of it. So turn that clamp on, and then if you were to render out that pass, you know, you could set up your PNG, set it to 16-bit, and then, you know, make an output file output node, and then, you know, choose your file right there. But the last thing I wanted to show is actually really cool. So let's turn off this, go back to our passes, turn off object index. I'm just going to 0 these both out, the car body and the ground. And let's just delete that object ID mask. So if we go to passes now and scroll down to the bottom, you have like light passes, but there's also something called Cryptomatte, which is kind of, I guess, the new latest and greatest things. And you can, it will allow you to separate objects not only by if they're different objects, so I just click object there, but also if it's the same object, and you can choose different materials within the same object. So I'm going to turn off material because we only care about the objects, and they're obviously different objects. So let me hit render, and it's going to render pretty quick. So now you have this new, I think it's under matte, you have this new thing called, it's Cryptomatte. And I'm going to just plug in these Cryptomatte outputs into the Cryptomatte inputs of our new node. I'm going to drag the image into the image, and let's just see. If I scroll through, Control Shift click through, we get this option to pick. And we didn't set up any ID mask, but now all of a sudden we have this kind of cool looking, I mean, I might even render something out like that. That looks pretty awesome. But I can do this little eyedrop and say, add this pink. So now if I go to matte, it's made a matte for me, and I can add that matte to this. And so that's kind of a more complicated way to do it, but this technique would allow for more flexibility, I think, in the future if you went to pick and say, oh, I want to also add the car to my matte. And now your matte has that. It's just a really cool way that it's, I think I can add the wheel. So now that wheel is chosen, even though these two blues look slightly the same, they're actually different. So I could add this door, remove this wheel, and now the wheel's gone, but the door's there. So it seems like a very powerful tool for matting, for masking and making mattes with your 3D objects. So I thought it was worth sharing, and let me go back to my pick and just remove all of these things. Yeah, so you do get the same result, and I think this is a skill worth practicing because it's probably what most people will use in the future.